There is an instruction printed on a sign along Interstate 10 in southern Arizona and repeated on a state website and recited in a public service announcement that has run on Phoenix television for over a decade, and it is 4 words long. Pull aside, stay alive. That is the part everyone remembers. It is on bumper stickers. It is on the side of Arizona Department of Transportation trucks. The part almost nobody remembers is the sentence that comes after it, the one that tells you what to do once you have pulled aside, and that sentence contains an instruction that runs against every reflex a driver has ever built. Turn off your lights, all of them. Headlights, taillights, hazards. Take your foot off the brake pedal so the brake lights die too. Set the parking brake. Sit in the dark in a car nobody can see, in a wall of dirt where you cannot see, and wait. Every instinct you have says the opposite. You are in zero visibility. You are stopped near a freeway where traffic runs at 75 miles an hour. Every driver's education class you ever took, every winter you ever spent in fog, every roadside emergency you ever had trained you to make yourself visible. Hazards on. Be seen. Being seen is safety. In an Arizona dust storm, being seen is how you die. Not because the dust hurts you, because of what the driver behind you does when he sees your taillights. That is what this is about. Not the storm, the taillights. Start with the ground, because the ground is the whole story, and the ground in this particular place was made by people. The stretch of Interstate 10 that matters runs roughly between Casa Grande and Picacho Peak in Pinal County, in the flat agricultural belt between Phoenix and Tucson, around mileposts 209 through 219. 10 miles of it. If you have driven from Phoenix to Tucson, you have driven it, and you almost certainly did not notice anything about it, because on a clear day it is the least interesting 10 miles of road in the American Southwest. Flat brown fields. A gas station. A Dairy Queen at the Picacho Peak exit. Creosote at the margins. The peak itself off to the southeast. A dark volcanic tooth, the one landmark that gives the place its name. Here is what is underneath it. Ron Gibson, describing the region to the Arizona Daily Star, called that whole area from Picacho Peak west to Casa Grande, around Eloy and Toltec and Arizona City, the prehistoric and historic terminus of the Santa Cruz River. Water used to end there. Silt used to settle there. For thousands of years, the river carried fine sediment down out of the mountains and dropped it on that plain, and the plain built up a layer of soil so fine and so light that the desert crust and the desert plants were the only things holding it down. In the early 1900s, farmers diverted the river to irrigate those fields. They plowed the crust. They grew crops through the 1950s. Then the water ran out, and they walked away and left the fields bare. Desert soil that has been broken by a plow does not recover quickly. That is David Breshears, a professor of natural resources at the University of Arizona, and it is the most important sentence in this entire story. Vegetation matters, and a little goes a long way, said Jason Field, a researcher who studied blowing dust experimentally on desert land south of Tucson. Without it, the dirt is loose. Gibson put the consequence plainly. There are places along that whole freeway stretch where even the slightest breeze can pick that stuff up and make a visibility problem. The slightest breeze. Not a haboob. Not a wall. A breeze. So the mechanism begins about a century before your car arrives. Somebody irrigated. Somebody plowed. Somebody quit. And the interstate was later routed straight through the middle of it. Now the wind. Arizona's monsoon season runs June 15th to September 30th, and the classic version of this event is the one that makes the national news. A thunderstorm collapses. The downdraft hits the ground and blasts outward in every direction, scooping up whatever the desert floor is willing to give it, and it gives a great deal. The dust builds into a rolling wall. Those walls can climb thousands of feet and stretch for miles. That is the haboob. And the haboob is not actually the thing that kills the most people on I-10, because you can see a haboob coming. On August 25, 2025, one of them swallowed Metro Phoenix, tore a connector bridge apart at Sky Harbor with 70-mile-an-hour gusts, and knocked out power to more than 60,000 customers. Everybody saw it. It was on every phone in Maricopa County. The thing that kills you is smaller and lower, and it is on top of you before your brain finishes the sentence about what it is. The Arizona Department of Transportation calls the small ones dust channels, a ribbon of blowing dirt lifting off one abandoned field, crossing the freeway at an angle, maybe a few hundred yards wide. Not thousands of feet high. Waist high. Chest high. Windshield high. It does not look like weather. It looks like smoke drifting off a fire somewhere. And by the time you are close enough to disagree with that assessment, you are inside it. Garen Groff, a public information officer for ADOT, has described what happens then in 7 words. The visibility can drop to almost zero instantly. Instantly, hold that against the arithmetic of the road. The posted speed limit on that stretch of I-10 is 75 miles per hour. That is 110 feet per second. At 75, a passenger car needs somewhere north of 300 feet to stop from the moment you decide to stop, and that number assumes clean pavement, good tires, a driver who is already alert. In a dust channel, visibility can go to something under 50 feet. You are traveling 110 feet every second and you can see 50 feet ahead. That is the entire physics problem. You cannot stop inside what you can see. Nobody can. Not the tourist in a rental, not the trucker with 2 million safe miles. The gap between your sight distance and your stopping distance opened up the instant the dust arrived, and it opened up for every single vehicle in the lane behind you at the same instant. And here is the part that turns a visibility problem into a mass casualty event. I-10 through that corridor is not just a commuter road. It is the primary freight artery between the Los Angeles ports and the whole American interior, one of the most heavily used truck routes in the country, and it is running loaded semis nose to tail through those 10 miles at all hours. A tractor-trailer at highway weight needs substantially more room to stop than a car does. It cannot swerve. It cannot brake hard without folding, so when the dust comes across, the freeway does not stop. It compresses. Which brings it back to the taillights, and to the specific reason ADOT's instruction sounds insane and is not. Picture the sequence honestly, because everyone gets this part wrong by imagining themselves as the first car. You are the first car. Dust hits. You do the responsible thing. You slow down, you get onto the shoulder or a little past it, you stop, and you put your hazards on, because you are a careful person and there are people behind you and you want them to know you are there. 4 amber lights blinking in a brown wall. Now be the second car. 11 seconds later. Doing 70, inside the same brown wall, seeing nothing, no lane lines, no horizon, no sky. No reference for where the road even is. And then, out of all that nothing, a light. What does a driver do with a light in zero visibility? He does not analyze it. He does not think, that is probably a stationary vehicle on the shoulder, I will maintain my lane position relative to painted markings I cannot see. In a sensory void, the human brain grabs the only data available and steers toward it. It is the same reflex that puts a drunk driver into the one lit object on an empty rural road. The light means road. The light means someone ahead of me who knows where the road is. Follow the light. So he follows it, onto the shoulder, at 70 miles an hour. into the back of your stopped car. Then the third car sees his lights, which are now stopped too, and the fourth sees the third. Your hazards are not a warning. In zero visibility, your hazards are a target designator, and they are pointing at you. That is why the instruction ends the way it does. Off the roadway. Vehicle in park. Emergency brake set. All lights off. Foot off the brake pedal. Seatbelts buckled, everyone stays inside and you wait it out. Rick Murray, President and CEO of the Arizona chapter of the National Safety Council, gave the reasoning in one clause: take your foot off the brake pedal so no one follows you. So no one follows you. A dark car is invisible, and invisible is survivable, because nobody aims at what they cannot see. A lit car is a beacon in a place where every driver within a quarter mile is desperate for a beacon. You are asking a stranger doing 110 feet per second to find something to steer at. And he will find you. The dust does not kill you. The dust just removes everyone's ability to see. What kills you is the last visible thing in the world being your bumper. That is the mechanism. 9 minutes of it and nobody has died yet. Now the ledger. December 22, 2009, not monsoon season. Winter, a frontal system was moving across Arizona, the kind that would put snow above 6,000 feet in the northern part of the state before the day was over and drop freezing temperatures on Tucson overnight. Down on the flats near Casa Grande, it did what wind does to abandoned farmland, and the Arizona Daily Star reported the storm as unexpected. Katie Edie was 16. Her brother Mark Zachary Edie was 14. They lived in Casa Grande, and it was the start of winter break, and Katie was driving Mark down to the Dairy Queen at Picacho Peak, where he was meeting friends for a sleepover. It is a short drive. Locals make it without thinking about it. Mark was nicknamed Sunshine because his long blonde curls stuck out from his football helmet like the quarterback in Remember the Titans. The night before she died, Katie and 2 girlfriends had been making Christmas cookies. Just before 11 in the morning, the dust came across the eastbound lanes and the freeway compressed. 22 vehicles, at least 7 people injured. Vehicles caught fire, and the burned-out shells sat scattered across the eastbound lanes while the interstate stayed closed for roughly 9 hours. The third person killed was Edgar Ivan Medina Vargas, 25, driving a pickup from Phoenix to El Paso. His father, Refugio, was following him in a semi-trailer cab. According to Department of Public Safety reports on the crash, Medina Vargas slowed suddenly for the dust and was struck from behind by his father's semi, which pushed the pickup into a stopped tractor trailer ahead of him. He was killed between the 2 trucks. One of them was driven by his father. Nobody in that crash did anything remarkable. A teenager drove her little brother to get ice cream, 4 miles from home, in a town they had lived in their whole lives. A man slowed down for dust, which is the correct thing to do. Sandy Ide, the mother of the 2 teenagers, said something about the aftermath that has stayed with everyone who has covered this road since. You can go crazy trying to find somebody responsible. There is no one. That is the problem with this road. There is never anyone. 22 months later, October 4th, 2011, near Picacho Peak, about midway between Phoenix and Tucson. Blowing dust rolled across the interstate and caused 3 separate pileups involving dozens of vehicles. One of them ran to 16 cars. A 70-year-old man was killed, and at least 15 other people were injured. 3 pileups, 1 storm. The dust does not hit the freeway at a point. It hits it along a line. And every vehicle on that line inherits the same broken arithmetic at the same moment, and each pileup is just a place where somebody found a light to steer at. October 29, 2013, 12:30 in the afternoon, eastbound, north of Picacho Peak. The National Weather Service had issued a blowing dust advisory shortly before it happened. Bart Graves, a Department of Public Safety spokesman, gave the numbers afterward: winds at 29 miles an hour and zero visibility. 29 miles an hour. That is a stiff afternoon breeze. That is a day you would hang laundry. 19 vehicles, as many as 7 of them tractor-trailers. 3 dead, at least 12 injured, injuries running from serious to critical. 3 helicopters lifted patients to the University of Arizona Medical Center in Tucson, to St. Joseph's Hospital and Medical Center in Phoenix, and to Banner Good Samaritan. The interstate backed up 6 miles and stayed closed for close to 7 hours. One of the dead was Gordon Lee Smith, 76, of Meade, Washington. His wife was among the injured. DP's Captain Brian Preston described the shape of the thing as investigators found it. It looked like one big event, he said, but in reality it was probably a series of collisions, and collisions 1 and 2 became part of 3 and 4. That is the sentence to keep. Not a crash, a series. Each car that stopped became the thing the next car hit. The storm lasted about 15 minutes. It subsided. The wind died down and the air cleared, and Picacho Peak came back out of the murk, and 19 vehicles were scattered across the eastbound lanes of Interstate 10, with 3 people dead in them, and it was a Tuesday. State Senator Steve Farley of Tucson was caught in that storm, sitting in stopped eastbound traffic, listening to a series of crashes happening across the median in the westbound lanes that he could not see. He said afterward that it was terrifying, that all of a sudden it is upon you and you cannot see a thing. He also said this, and it is the only prediction in this script that has never once failed: people are going to die in the future as well. 16 months of dust detection technology and variable speed limits later, and 120 miles up the road from Picacho Peak. March 1, 2020-25. Around 1 in the afternoon, I-10 near milepost 88, roughly 14 miles west of Tonopah. Several parts of Arizona were under wind and blowing dust advisories that day. DPS said 1 collision occurred and led to secondary crashes involving several other vehicles. In all, 12 vehicles, 6 commercial, 4 passenger, a van, and an RV towing a trailer. Multiple vehicles caught fire. 4 people were dead, about 50 miles west of that location. Another crash stopped traffic the same day. 16 years after the Eid children, on a different section of the same interstate, in a different season, with better forecasting and better warnings, and a dust detection system that the whole country came to look at, 12 vehicles compressed into each other on a Saturday afternoon in the exact same sequence. 1 collision, then the secondary crashes, then the fire. Set the individuals down and look at the shape of it. A study published in 2023 in the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society merged fatality data from the NOAA Storm Events Database with the Department of Transportation's Fatality Analysis Reporting System, and found 232 deaths from wind-blown dust events in the United States between 2007 and 2017. That is more than the official natural hazard statistics reported, because roughly 45% of dust deaths get filed under high winds or thunderstorms instead. In most years, dust killed a comparable number of Americans to hurricanes, to thunderstorms, to lightning, to wildfires. It is an average of about 21 traffic deaths a year, and almost nobody thinks of it as a hazard at all. The same study found 2 hotspots in the country. One is Lordsburg Playa in New Mexico, the other is the 10 miles between Phoenix and Tucson, and the researchers used the name that Arizona had already given it: the Deadliest 10 miles. Of the 6 worst dust wrecks in that dataset, the ones with 3 or more deaths, Every single one involved a semi-truck, and 5 of the 6 happened on Interstate 10. An Arizona Daily Star analysis of state data found that a 2-mile stretch near Picacho Peak was the deadliest part of I-10 in Arizona, killing at least 8 people in more than 50 crashes since 2000, with the danger concentrated hardest at mileposts 214 and 213, north of the peak and south of Eloy. Between 2001 and 2010, there were 37 dust crashes in that small area, and 141 dust-caused crashes on the 70-mile run between Marana and Casa Grande. Between 2010 and 2015, a DOT recorded 83 dust-related crashes on the 10-mile segment alone. 3 of them involved fatalities. The state has not been idle about it. ADOT built a $72 million improvement project on that segment, adding a lane in each direction, and installing what is described as a first-of-its-kind dust detection and dynamic response system, funded in part by a $12.8 million federal grant, short-range dust gauges, closed-circuit cameras, and an X-band Doppler radar dish that can pick up a dust storm from over 40 miles out. Which matters because, as Ken Waters, warning coordination meteorologist with the National Weather Service, put it, when dust storms start at ground level, radar cannot see them. When the sensors detect low visibility, variable speed limit signs automatically walk the limit down from 75 in 10-mile-an-hour increments to a minimum of 35. It went online in 2020. It is activated dozens of times. On August 25, 2025, it worked exactly as designed, dropping the corridor from 75 to 35. None of that technology can make you turn off your lights. There is no sensor for the reflex. The system can tell you the dust is coming, and it can tell you to slow down, and it can put every warning a DOT has ever written on a message board a mile ahead of you, and then it has to hand the decision to a person. In a car. In the dark, with a hazard switch under his thumb. Here is what I keep coming back to. In every one of these, the fatal act was a correct act. Katie Edie drove her brother to a Dairy Queen. Edgar Medina Vargas slowed down for reduced visibility, which is what you are supposed to do. Gordon Lee Smith was going somewhere with his wife in the car. The driver who stops on the shoulder and puts his hazards on is doing the thing his instincts and his training and his decency all tell him to do, and he is doing it for the sake of the people behind him. The small, ordinary thing is not a mistake. That is what makes this road different from almost every other dangerous road in America. On most of them, the ledger is full of people who did something wrong. Sped, drank, got tired, ignored a sign, went off the pavement. The lesson writes itself, and everyone driving home can quietly file it under things that happen to other people. Not here. Here the small ordinary thing is a flick of a switch on the steering column that means I am here, please do not hit me. And the desert takes that sentence and turns it inside out. In a dust channel between Casa Grande and Picacho Peak, I am here, please do not hit me is received as here I am, aim at this. Not a failure of judgment, a failure of the world to behave the way judgment expects. Everything you know about being seen is correct on every road you will drive this year, except 10 of them. Somewhere on I-10 this summer, in the monsoon, or this winter in a front nobody bothered to mention, the wind is going to come off a field that a farmer abandoned in 1953 and lift 100 years of river silt across 4 lanes of the busiest freight corridor in the American Southwest. The message boards will light up. The speed limit will step down, 75 to 65 to 55 to 45 to 35. And most people will slow down, because most people do. Some of them will get off at Sunshine Boulevard or the Picacho Peak exit and sit in a parking lot and wait, and they will be fine, and they will never know they were ever in a story. And some driver, a good driver, A careful one, a man with his family in the car, will not find an exit in time. He will get onto the shoulder the way the sign told him to. He will get his kids to keep their belts on. He will look in his mirror at a brown wall with a freight corridor somewhere inside it, and he will think about the semis, and he will reach up and press the triangle, because he is not going to sit in the dark on the shoulder of an interstate and let his family get hit from behind. 4 amber lights, blinking, in the only place in America where that is the wrong answer. Behind him, 11 seconds back, doing 70 in a world with no lane lines and no horizon and no sky, someone is looking for anything at all. The sign is still out there. Pull aside. Stay alive. 4 words that everybody in Arizona can recite, and that tell you only half of what you need. The other half has no rhyme in it and no bumper sticker and no jingle. Get off the pavement. Park it. Emergency brake. Foot off the brake pedal. Every light in the vehicle off. Belts on, doors shut, nobody gets out, and you sit in a dark car in a brown cloud on the deadliest 10 miles of Interstate 10, and you fight the single strongest instinct you have, which is the instinct to be seen. For however long it takes, because there is a man behind you at 110 feet per second with nothing at all to steer by, and the last thing he sees before he dies in your trunk with your children in the back seat will be the thing you switched on to save them, and it will be blinking, and it will be amber, and it will be lights.